Hello, welcome back to Reads of an Apple. My name is Stacy and I am here to do the mid-year freakout book tag. I wanted to wait to at least get through most or all of June and take some time to really think about my answers to these questions because it's hard to pick a favorite, you know? So I have also needed time to pull books. So I've got a huge stack here on my bed and my bookshelves are torn apart in the background. So we will just get right to it. Going through all 13 questions, I'll pop them down below. And if you would like to do this video as well, I know it's a super popular one on BookTube. So let's get to it. First question. Best book so far in 2022. Now, I could not choose just one, so I went through my main sub-genres. So, for fantasy/urban fantasy, my favorite book so far would be Wildfire by Ilona Andrews. This is book 3 in her Hidden Legacy series. This is the culmination of Nevada and Mad Rogan's trilogy. And it was amazing. I mean, all of the books are amazing. Ilona Andrews is amazing. But the way that this book just wrapped up and it had me laughing, it had me crying, it had me swooning. This is definitely my favorite of the series so far. But I have not started Catalina's books yet. And so this is my favorite urban or just straight fantasy romance. Then, for historical, I had to go with West End Earl by Bethany Bennett. I did not realize that I actually read this year, but I read this in January, which is why it felt so long ago. But this is one of my favorite new modern historical releases. There was a point in this where I was just completely astounded. And it took a turn where I had no inkling that it was going to go that direction. And when it did, my mind was blown. It's still blown. This is one of the books that lives rent-free in my head. I love Cal. I love Fee. And when the last book in this series came out in May, it was such a good wrap-up to the trilogy. But this is book 2 in her Misfits of Mayfair series. And you can read it as a standalone. I love all 3 together, but this West End Earl is just so good. So good. Then for paranormal, I had to go with Always Practice Safe Hex by Juliet Cross. This is the 4th book in her Stay as Spell series. This is Livy and Gareth's book. It's Juliet Cross. It's Stay as Spell. I mean, it's a witch and a grim. I mean, what else can I tell you outside of go read this series? Please and thank you. Love it. Then, we'll stick with Juliet Cross. My favorite contemporary release so far of the year is Parks and Provocation, also by Juliet Cross. Now, this is book 2 in the Green Valley Heroes series, and this she wrote with Smarty Pants Romance. So, book 1 in this series is actually by a different author, but I loved this. This is her first official published contemporary romance. I'm actually currently reading the arc for her one that she's doing by herself, Bright Like Wildfire. I keep wanting to say Wildflower, but I really love this. I love Jed and Lola. And I cannot wait to see where she goes, both in this series and in the one I'm currently reading. I'm loving her contemporary work so far. As you can tell, I am a Juliet Cross stan. So, favorite contemporary so far. Then, for the last one, favorite sci-fi, I gotta give it to Victoria Aveline by Using Feiho. This is the 5th book in her Cleclanian series. This is alien sci-fi romance. Oh my gosh, Feiho is a space pirate. We'll just call it like it is. And, this book, I love the Cleclanian series. It is probably one of my favorite alien romance series. I love it. The covers are gorgeous. Even the backs are gorgeous. I cannot wait to see what she does next. I haven't seen a newsletter lately. This came out in January. I read this in January, very shortly after release. I love Victoria Aveline. If you have not tried her alien romance series, please, please pick it up. It is so freaking good, especially if you like alien romances. And that is it for favorites so far. So, number 2, the best sequel you've read. And I tried to not use the same books from prompts, although there will be a couple holdovers. But if I'm going for a straight sequel, a book 2 in a series, I gotta give it to Enthralling the Orc by Tracy Lauren. This is book 2 in her Perished Woods series. I love this series. The first book's Tamed by the Troll, and this is with a human and then a half orc, and it's really good, and I cannot wait to see what she does with his brother in the next book, because there's a teaser for it in the back, and I'm very, very intrigued. And then if I'm going like in a series and not just a straight book number 2, I'm going to give it to A False Start by Elsie Silver. This is the 4th and final book in her Gold Rush Ranch series. This was also really good. I love Elsie Silver. She's one of my favorite contemporary authors, and the way that this series wrapped up was just so nice, and it's this book's fault because he calls her Wildflower a lot, so that's where the Wildflower always gets stuck in my head, because my favorite book in the series is still the first book, Off to the Races, but A False Start was really good as well, and I'd say this is my favorite series book that I've read that I didn't already mention in these other ones. Number 3, a new release you haven't read yet but want to. There's a lot. Let's be honest. There is a lot. But I chose 3 that I had sitting on my headboard that I really want to get to soon. And the one that I'm probably going to be picking up the soonest of the 3 is Flawless by Elsie Silver. Once again, Elsie Silver. This is the first book in her spin-off series from the Gold Rush Ranch series, and this is Chestnut Springs. Yeah, Chestnut Springs. This is book 1. This just came out at the end of June. I cannot wait to read this. I know it's Rhett and he's a bull rider, and then it's like his agent slash babysitter, and there's like one bed trope, and I cannot wait to freaking read this. I'm surprised I haven't picked it up yet, but all these freaking book club books that I didn't read ahead of time because I like to wait and read them until right before the book club meeting, so it's fresh in my brain, which means I haven't gotten to this yet. But this is number 1 priority of these 3 books. Number 2 priority is Rewriting the Stars. This is book 6 in Claire Kingsley's Bailey Brothers series. This is the final brother. Oh, I keep meaning to read this. I keep wanting to read this, but at the same time, I don't want it to end. And I know there's going to be a standalone Christmas book that's set in Tillicum, which is where this is set. And I know there's going to be a spin-off of this one that's on the Havens. But maybe I'll wait until the Haven book is coming out and then read this. Or wait until the Christmas book is coming out and then read this. Because Claire Kingsley is someone that when I read her, I like to binge her. So I also don't want it to end. I have that problem sometimes. But I definitely need to get to Rewriting the Stars. For sure. This is probably priority 2 of the 3 books. And then the other one I had on my headboard that is number 3 and 3rd in priority would be Brutal Vows by J.T. Geisinger. This is the 4th and final book in her Queens and Monsters series. This is Spider's book. I'm very intrigued. I know a lot of people really loved this book when they read it for the Mafia Romance Readathon earlier this year. I definitely need to pick it up, but I'm also pacing myself on these and letting it marinate, and I also don't want it to end. But I need to read this. I need to know how this series finishes. So those are the 3 that are new releases that I haven't read yet, that I have in paperback sitting on my headboard as in I need to read these soon. I want to read these soon. Number 4. Most anticipated release for the second half of the year. Now, this one's hard. A lot of the authors I've kind of been reading now are indie authors, so they don't announce super far ahead when a book is coming out, but I will link up in the cards above. That is my quarter 3 new releases video, where I went through July, August, and September releases I'm super anticipating. I don't have too much more for quarter 4. I do have like 5 or 6 books in total for those last 3 months, but half of them don't have covers yet and stuff. But I will say, sometime in October, the plan is for the next book in Stay a Spell to be out, and that is going to be Resting Witch Face, which is supposed to be Jules's book. And then also Avery Flynn has a release. I think it's supposed to come out in December, and it's called What You Gonna Do, and it sounds like it sounds super cute, super fun. I'm a fan of Avery Flynn, so those would probably be the 2 so far that I'm most anticipating. All right, number 5, the biggest disappointment. I'm going to give this to A Kiss of Venom by Bina Khan. I did like this book. I gave it 3.5 stars, but it's the biggest disappointment because the way that it was kind of blurbed and the way that a couple of people reviewed it and recommended it to me was as a Sleeping Beauty mafia romance retelling. And she was an FBI agent and tracked and like the mafia, the Bratva head that she was going after is the guy that she falls in love with, and with the Sleeping Beauty trope. And it just didn't knock it out of the park for me. It didn't live up to the hype or the reviews that I saw, and I just wanted more of the retelling. It didn't really have much of the retelling aspect outside of the fact that he kisses her and wakes her up from a coma. But I enjoyed it. So 3.5 stars. It just wasn't a 4 or 5 star. I was expecting it to be more in the 4.5, 5-star range, just based off what I heard in the blurb. But unfortunately, it didn't quite meet that. Number 6 is The Biggest Surprise. Now, I would say I'm going to give this to a series, and that is going to be Words for Nerds by Allie York. I binged this series. I needed a book that was published in 2020, so I picked up the first book, All Geek to Me. Absolutely loved it. Picked up the next book. Then I had to read some book club books, and then when I got to the beginning of June and I had free reign, I read the rest of the books in the series. These are shorter novellas, but in the like 200-ish, not novellas, they're shorter novels with a couple novellas as the last 2 books. But this series, man, this series, I loved it. It is set, the first 4 books are set around 4 friends, and they are the employees of Words for Nerds, which is a comic book and geek store, and it is 4 ladies who run this store. It's the only women-run comic book store in the US, and it's also one of the most popular stores, and it's, if you are into any fandoms, any geek culture, Marvel, Lord of the Rings, video games, anything fandom related, check this series out. I loved it. They were just so feel good and quick and just made me happy, you know? They just made me happy. That was 6. Okay, so number 7, favorite new author, debut or new to you. This is a hard one. I don't know about debut. I don't think I've read very many debut books this year. I would have to say Sarah J. Maas. I finally started reading her. Jen from the Book Refuge organized the SJM along, and we are reading through Sarah J. Maas's Backlist in publication order. I had never read her before, and I am enjoying myself. We just finished the 4th book in Throne of Glass, and we've read the 1st book in ACOTAR, and I am kicking myself for not reading her earlier. But at the same time, it's also fun to read it in this kind of setting, and there's quite a mix. I don't know if it's like half and half, but there are quite a few people who, like me, who are reading it for the first time, but there are also quite a few people who are rereading the series for 1st, 2nd, 3rd, multiple times. So it's fun to kind of get the mix of opinions and thoughts and insights into these books from both sides of it, which is super fun. I would probably say that's the biggest one. And then I just want to throw a couple of authors out there. I've only read 1 book by each of these, but I definitely want to read more. I would say Jenny Bunting. I read Fool's Gold, which is the 1st book in her Finch family series. Loved it, 5 stars. I definitely want to read more in that series and more of her works. I also read Eve Casey for the first time this year, and it was All or Nothing, the 1st book in her All In series. I need to finish that series. I also want to read her duology that's Love Hands. I have the 1st book in paperback, so I was trying to look at it, but I want to read more Eve Casey. And then Elizabeth Harmon. I read her book Pairing Off. This is the 1st book in her Red Hot Russian series, and this series is based around figure skaters, most of them Russian figure skaters, but the 1st book, Pairing Off, I loved. It was blurbed, or I had like the little quotation mark before a blurb that called it the Russian version of, oh my gosh, I just lost it. The Cutting Edge, which is an ice skating movie that I absolutely love. It's one of my favorite movies. And so I immediately picked it up when I saw that. I loved it. I definitely want to read more in the series. However, I felt weird picking up the 2nd book, because when I went to pick up the 2nd book, that was when Russia started, going to war with Ukraine. And so I felt weird, even though it's written by an American author. I just felt weird reading books centered around Russians. And I know, like, Russian citizens themselves can't control the government, and it's a crazy situation over there. But I just felt weird picking it up, so I have not read more. I definitely want to read more. And I absolutely love it. And I saw in Elizabeth's bio that she herself was a figure skater, because it felt very real. It didn't have any terms that I was like, that's not a figure skating term. Or like obvious like descriptions of a turn or a lift using the wrong terminology. So when I saw at the end of the book that she was a figure skater herself, I was like, okay, that makes sense why she knew what she was writing about. And I really loved it. So all new to me authors that I love. The last 3 I definitely need to read more of, but I'm definitely intrigued enough to keep reading more. And all of them I've given 5 stars. Then number 8, newest fictional crush. Now I don't typically do like book boyfriends or lists like that. I don't know. That's just not something I do, and I am a self-inserter reader, but because I self-insert in every book, every book is my book boyfriend or my girl crush or whatever. So it's like I have characters that stick out, but I don't know. Maybe I'm weird, but I don't have a book boyfriend list. But so I kind of went through the books that I've already talked about that are favorites of mine, and just was like, okay, who's a character that sticks out in my mind? And My girl crush option, I'm going to go with Tuesday, and she is in the Words for Nerds series. Her book is I Touch My Shelf, and she is the runner of the cafe at the comic book store. She's also secretly a fantasy author, and her fandom is Lord of the Rings. So, like, one of her sayings is sweet baby hobbits. And every time she says it, I just died. I was just like, I love it. I love it. So she was my top girl crush that came to my head at first. And then for a male character, I'm going to go with Jed from Parks and Provocation. He's a firefighter. He was super, like, easygoing, family-oriented. The banter he had and the way that he really just tried to woo Lola, I really loved. So Jed also stuck out to me as well. So if I had a book boyfriend list, he'd probably be on it. And then a newest favorite character. So for this, I'm going to go with the SJM Throne of Glass series so far. And I'm going to say Aelin / Selena. Selena. I love the way, and I've only read the first 4 books, like I said. And then the first 3 novellas. I still need to read the 4th novella. But I've really been enjoying her character arc so far, and book 3, Heir of Fire, broke me. It broke me. The way that grief was dealt with and talked about, and how there's different kinds of grief, and how she's kind of compiling all that grief on her, and she's finally being forced to deal with it. That has been my favorite SJM book so far. Because it just really, really touched me. But I'd also have to say, when talking about new favorite characters, I love Abraxos, who is Manon's wyvern, and I love him. He's like this scraggly little fighter wyvern, and then he's just laying in the field, sniffing wildflowers. I love it. What is it with me and wildflowers? But also Manon, she is so cool, and the way that she is kind of starting to turn at the end of Queen of Shadows, I'm so excited to see what she does in the future books. And those are probably 3 of my favorite characters. Yes, they're all from the same book series, but they're who are living rent-free in my head right now. And then book that made you cry. Now, I am a sympathetic crier, and I cry very easily. So, honestly, most of the books I've read, I've probably teared up at some point if I'm into it. So, if a book is 4 stars or more, I probably at least teared up, if not sobbed like a baby. But, so I just went through... Can I help you? My goodness, she's just yelling at me. But the last book I read that made me cry was The Assassin in the Desert, which is novella 0.3 by SJM. I read it this weekend. And it was the last full book I read. I don't know why it made me cry. It's probably like the least sad of her books, but just... the scene where she has a flashback to Arabin beating her and Sam watching her getting beat. It broke. I definitely teared up and cried. And not like cry, but there were tears that dropped. They weren't just wetting my eyeballs. Can I help you? My goodness. And then also when she kind of gets drugged and left out, and her immediate thought is very reactionary and very emotional, and she's just like, they weren't really my friends, they didn't really like me, nobody wanted to say goodbye to me, and I teared up then too, because I was just like, oh, Aelin, no. And then when she like snapped out of it and she was like, no, this isn't how the mute master is. Something else is going on. And then she sees the army marching towards where their little sanctuary is. And I was just like, that 100-page freaking novella that's all about her just going and training with the silent assassins had me crying twice. So if that doesn't tell you how easily I cry, there you go. And then number 11, a book that made you happy. I mean, once again, a lot of these books make me happy. I think I'm going to go with Space Junk by Sarah L. Hudson. This was the last like rom-com I read and I really loved it. I'm easy to make laugh too. And it had me cracking up and I just really enjoyed this. And this is the first book in her space series. And then number 12, most beautiful book you've bought this year or received. So I chose 3 because I couldn't, well, I chose technically 3 in a series. So the first I'm going to bring back up is Flawless by Elsie Silver because look at this. I love the like lens flare. I don't know. Let me see if I can turn my light down. There you go. So you can kind of see the coloring in the clouds better. It's just gorgeous. It's just gorgeous. And he has the neck grab. It's just so pretty. I cannot wait to read this. And then I went with the historical. I'm going to go with Joanna Shupe, The Bride Goes Rogue, because her clinch covers are amazing. Oh my gosh. I'm going to lower it so these don't glare as much. Super cute. And it's kind of hard to tell, but this is a really pale pink. So gorgeous. And then what I actually received today, it came out today, is Lore Olympus Volume 2. I love Lore Olympus. I also ordered the Barnes & Noble exclusive hardback that has different art on the front, but that hasn't come yet today. But I got this one today because this one had like guaranteed release date delivery. And for some reason, Barnes & Noble doesn't do that. But I couldn't not mention this because Lore Olympus is just gorgeous. And then the other one I want to mention is Juliet Cross's Vampire Blood series. So we've got the Emerald Lily, the White Lily, the Red Lily, and the Black Lily. I think these are absolutely gorgeous. Lilies are my favorite flower, and they are just absolutely gorgeous. And I had to buy them because even though I had the original covers with the dudes on them, I had to get the lilies. Okay, almost done. Number 12. Or no, that was number 12. So the final question, number 13. Lucky number 13. What books do you need to read by the end of the year? So for this one, I grabbed a couple of the books that are on my headboard for I want to read very soon. And then I also grabbed a couple other options. So I will just grab those real quick. So I definitely need to finish the Trap trilogy by Tracy Ann Warren. So I need to read the second book, The Wife Trap, and the third book, which is The Wedding Trap. Then I have the Harlequin Desire book, A Song of Secrets by J.C. Lee. This is about a cello player and her romance with a composer, I think. Yeah. An anonymous composer, and I think it's a second chance romance, which isn't my favorite, but I love like music-based romances, so I had to get it. And I loved J.C. Lee's other Harlequin books, I think their Song trilogy. Maybe it's not the Song trilogy. There's somebody that has a Song trilogy. Song is in the Korean last name. And then I also really want to start the new Sunrise Cove series by Jill Chavez. This is book 1, The Family You Make. It came out earlier this year. And then the second book, The Friendship Pact. This just came out. I need to read this. Jill Chavez is has been one of my go-to authors for the longest time. And I definitely want to try her new series. I might have mentioned this before, but when she announced this series in her newsletter, she did mention that this was going back more to her romance roots because her previous series that she was doing before this one were more women's fiction. And I think that's the Wild Stone. Yeah, the Wild Stone novels. That was the women's fiction one. This is Sunrise Cove, and I definitely need to read these. And these are completely different vibes. We've got a snowy mountain atmosphere and on the beach. Okay, another one I want to mention is the Twisted series by Anna Huang. I have read Twisted Love, but the 4th book just came out, so I need to read, now that it's out, I want to binge the rest of the series, so I need to read book 2, Twisted Games, book 3, Twisted Hate, and the new release, book 4, Twisted Lies. And I definitely want to try to get through these other 3 books before her new book comes out that I saw like a little blurb for on Instagram. And I guess it's a character that we meet in one of these books if we haven't already met him in the first one. But like I said, I've only read this one, so I need to finish the series. And then a series that I have been meaning to reread since February is one of my favorite fantasy romance series, and that is Embraced or Embraced by Magic by Carolyn Sparks. So here are the first 3 books. So we have How to Tame a Beast in 7 Days, So I Married a Sorcerer, and then 8 Rules for Dating a Dragon. So these 3 would be rereads for me. And this series was originally called the Embrace series when they were published by St. Martin's. But then the series was picked up by Kensington, so now it's called the Embraced by Magic series, but it's all the same thing. And then I need to reread book 4, How to Love Your Elf. Now, I need to reread those because every time a new book comes out in that series, I reread all of the books and then the new one. Well, a while ago, The Siren and the Deep Blue Sea came out, and from what I understood, this was going to be the final book in the series. And this book, I have been putting off because I do not want this series to end. Even though it is one of my favorite series, I do not want it to end. This came out in 2020. So I need to finally do my reread and reread this. But that is because in April of this year, I had no idea. The series is continuing, and from what I understand, I haven't looked at blurbs or much. I did look to see who it's about. So this is When a Princess Proposes. This is book 6 in the series, and this is supposed to be, I think, the daughter of the couple in the first book, How to Tame a Beast in 7 Days. So knowing that she's going to be continuing the series past the 5th book with the children, at least this book, I don't know if there's going to be more or not. Let me just see. No, there's just advertisements for the previous 2 books in here. I don't know. So maybe there won't be more after this one. But knowing I have 2 books to read in this series makes me more likely to reread them. And I've been wanting to reread it since Pharaoh Feb this year. Have not done it. I need to do it. I need to get caught up in this series. At the very least, read book 5 so then I can put this one off. But I don't want to. I need to read these, and that is a goal at some point when I have more free time, when I stop doing freaking readathons and book club books and can really just pick whatever I want. I definitely need to reread these. And this is a need, not a want, because it's also been a little bit. It's been since 2019 since I've reread this series. came out in 2020, so this might have come out in early 2020, but yeah, so I've read the first book 4 times. Because I read it, and then I read it again before the second book, and then before the third book, and then before the fourth book. So yeah, so I've read the first book 4 times. So this series means a lot to me. Plus, even though I love the original covers because they're more like stereotypical, this new style I think is absolutely gorgeous as well. But I definitely need to reread this series as well. But that is it. That is a lot of books. I've talked a lot at you, but I had a lot of fun doing this tag. I definitely had to put my thinking cap on for some of them and also try to cull some out. It did help that last year I ended up doing like a bracket to find my favorite book in each genre for the season. And I did a historical bracket, a contemporary bracket, and then I combined sci-fi, fantasy, and paranormal. So I already had my list of favorites and bonus books for the bracket if I had extra spaces. So I was able to at least look at that and pull my favorites from there. It was still kind of difficult, but I also tried to pick books that I already had in paperback, but not all of them, obviously. So yeah, I'm going to stop blabbering at you. Thank you so much for watching. If you do this book tag as well, let me know. I will definitely love to check it out. I'm always looking to see what books other people are loving and add them to my TBR if they aren't already on there. So yeah, just let me know. And I will see you all very, very soon. Thank you so much.